Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I am your host, John McDavitt, and this is the place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. My guest today is fine artist and plein air painter. She paints with knives, which is really, really cool. Her name is Maggie Capettini, and I am excited as she's going to share her creative journey and some of her best practices creatively and in business. And before I hand it off to us, I'm going to ask you, would you take a moment, if you are listening on the podcast, would you please subscribe? And then if you would leave us a review and a 5-star rating, that would be fantastic. If you are watching on YouTube, would you please just scroll down to the red subscribe button and give us a subscription? And that is going to help bring more awareness to the show. And please share these episodes with the artists in your life. They're going to be beneficial to them. So thanks so much for your support, and on with the show.
I am Maggie Capettini. I am an oil painter. I paint with knives. I am an art educator, and I'm a mom. That's
Awesome.
basic my basic core identity. Those
So
things.
you have loads of time on your hands,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I am a part-time educator, so that helps.
So how did you get to here? Like, what's your story? Where did your interest in art start?
I can remember being in kindergarten or first grade and wanting to be an artist when I grew up. I took art classes at park districts. Art at school. Obviously, was lucky to go to a public school that had art all the time. I had a not very good art teacher in high school. It was kind of sad. He was the whole art department, and by the time my youngest sister went through, they had 3 or 4 teachers in the department, and I just read in the Illinois Art Education Association that art department got some kind of award or recognition this year. So I'm like, yes, awesome to see, that progression and change. But I started college as a French major because my dad wanted me to do something marketable, and art was not perceived as marketable. That was what I really wanted to do. But I started as a French major, and I was still taking art classes, but my sophomore year I changed to do an art major, and I did a psychology minor, and I actually started the art therapy program at UIC after earning my bachelor's from Augustana College. And I lasted a month in the art therapy program before realizing it was not the right thing for me. It didn't feel like a fit to do. So I took some time off. I worked temp agency jobs and decided to pursue education. I was a teacher aide at Geneva High School in a self-contained special ed classroom for a year and a half while I went to school at night at Dominican University, and I got my teaching certification and my master's of arts in teaching in 2004. And my first job I got hired at was at a junior high in Skokie. So I taught junior high in Skokie and Oak Lawn for 4 years before becoming a mother. And once my son was born, I stayed home with him. And then I had my daughter 2 years later in 2010. And 2011 was when I started painting. I wasn't really an artist, actually. I mean, I was, but I wasn't, I don't think, until I started painting in about 2011. And partly because I had the passion for art and for making, but I didn't have a vision or like a path that felt like this is my path as an artist. And I took a landscape painting class with Jim Swanson, who is he's a wonderful teacher. He's very enthusiastic about what he does, and he's really good at both painting and teaching. So I've always loved nature. I've loved being outside, and painting landscapes really felt like a good fit. And I spent a lot of time doing it. I took a plein air painting class the next year, painting outside, and I've been painting outside ever since. Pretty more and more, the older my children get, the more I paint outside. um, And at the same time as I was becoming a painter, I also got back into education. I was teaching classes at an art center, and then I started teaching at a Montessori school. And after that, I was hired as a museum educator, which is something that I had never ever imagined doing. I don't know if I even knew that it was such a thing, that there was a job that you could have, but I really loved it. And I think if I had done everything over, that maybe that would be something to focus on from the beginning, would be museum education. I really like the way I was at a local history museum. So you're bringing together education and history, but really in a very specific local history kind of a way, directly meaningful to the people, many of the people who your outreach is for. So that was pretty cool. I did that for 5 years. And after that, I ended up back in the public school system. So last year and this year, I've been teaching in Downers Grove at a K-6 building, which is really super fun. When I first started teaching, I actually wasn't even certified to teach lower than sixth grade because I thought kindergartners were scary. Like, uh,
They
wasn't
are.
sure. Well, it turns out I love them. They're so much fun. The young kids they have so much enthusiasm, and they have no inhibition about making things, and they are not
Yeah.
self-conscious about any of it. And it's just really, really fun to see and to engage with and to give them opportunities to be messy and try stuff out. So
That's so cool. So here's what's really cool about your story right now is I've I don't know a lot about you, but we've worked kind of, I wouldn't say side by side. We've been artists who have worked in the same program for the city of Lockport on two separate occasions now. And um, it's really cool to have watched the work that you do, because I am I am jealous of your style and the stuff that you create. It's so fun, and you have such great control with the knife, and it's really beautiful work. And
thank you so
you're welcome. And what's really cool is I didn't have any clue about the art therapy background, and then working with special needs students, and then the museum educator part of it. And what that tells me a couple of things about you. It tells me that you you really you care about people knowing and experiencing things, but then there's also like a really empathetic and soft heart for people who are in need, between well, that could be anybody, right? But for
much.
art therapy, and then for special needs. And I have some dear friends who are special needs teachers, and that is a very sophisticated and challenging and special kind of person who gets into that. So maybe going back to the art therapy, which I know you said that ended up not being, like, you realized that wasn't your thing, but
Mhm.
there was something that called you to that. So how did that arise for you?
I think I just always felt compelled to help people. Like that was something, that felt right to me, like supporting people, providing them with help or resources. But for me, I think the art therapy is, to speak of the soft heart. My heart was too soft, I think, is my where I landed with that. That I thought that I would internalize too much.
Mm,
And so education was a different way where you can still really be there for kids beyond being an art teacher or
yeah.
whatever it is that you teach, that you're developing relationships with people. You're providing them a safe space to learn and grow and take risks. And so that was a better fit for me, combining art with service.
Yeah. Because I guess I'm imagining what you've said is that, and tell me if I'm wrong, that art therapy, when you're dealing with people with traumas, that the boundaries were a little bit difficult for you because you're so empathetic
Yeah,
and you could take it on. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That is wise and discerning, and it's hard. Yeah. Therapy is a hard thing, and trauma is a hard thing. Um, so, so then, uh, you focused on education. You just said you're not an artist at that point. Like you didn't see yourself really as a painter, right?
No. Mm-mm. I mean,
Yeah.
painting was what I loved. So Augustana had a studio program. I couldn't be a painting major or a drawing major like other certain, like my friend that went to Miami of Ohio was I think she was a painting major, but it was
Yeah.
just a survey course. And so I took a lot of different things. I loved painting and I loved figure drawing. But I really just have always enjoyed any kind of creative. This cabinet behind me is just full of all kinds of art making supplies. So, but to have, like I said, that identity as an artist, I don't know, it seemed like it was something that to have a path or a vision or a clear thing that I wanted to deeply explore, I guess is what it is, instead of, this and that are fun to do, but really what do I want to deeply explore as an artist? And that came around to landscape painting.
And so, would you say that? And I know when you have kids, because I remember, we had our son, and my wife made a decision to leave work and stay at home. And it's a weird time because you don't have any time or energy, but then you kind of have time
Yeah.
to do stuff. So it sounds like you I mean, how did you arrive then at taking the plein air courses and kind of heading in that direction?
Um, I think that plein air was appealing to me because first of all, because you're out in the environment, in nature, or, there are people who are urban plein air painters, which I'm not really. But the other aspect of it, well, there was a couple of appealing things about it too. A mom of very small children, I could paint a painting in one session and be done. I didn't have to have any of the paints or anything out in the house where the kids were, where the dog was. We had a small house. There was not really anywhere for me to do painting inside in a way that I felt was safe. Um, so we happened to live, you might be familiar with Hadley Valley in Joliet at Route 6 in Gauger. You should go
Oh
there.
no.
We haven't
Okay.
been. We lived in
Yeah.
the neighborhood across the street. And so I could go, it was so easy to go over there and paint in that environment. As my children got older, my son would get on the bus for kindergarten. I'd take my daughter to preschool. I had 2.5 hours. I would either paint at Hadley Valley or my daughter went to preschool at Pilcher Park. And obviously that's a beautiful environment as well. So that was how I fit in little pockets of painting time, partly because
That's
of
gorgeous. I just looked it up.
it's beautiful
Wow.
all seasons. And that was my first solo exhibit. I painted over the course of like 15 or 18 months all throughout. I was out there in my snow pants and everything, and I painted um, all the different seasons in Hadley Valley. When they do the burns, they roll up in the fall, they roll up hundreds of hay bales, and it's this sweeping landscape that you can see from Route 6. And I contacted the Will County Forest Preserve and said, hey, I did all of these paintings and I was wondering if there was a place or a way that I could have an exhibit, to share them. And they were really excited about it. It was an exhibit that ran from April through October that rotated through all 4 of their visitor centers. So that was really cool. That was a really cool experience to have gone through. A lot of times with a solo exhibit, you kind of envision it and then create the paintings, and then it's planned out from in advance. Where this one, I had done all the paintings and I wanted a place to exhibit them, and I didn't know where to do it, but I thought, okay, well, let me just take a shot here and ask the Forest Preserve if they're interested, thinking they'll probably say no. But they didn't. So it was awesome. It was really cool. it was a really cool experience, and their enthusiasm. I mean, these are people who love the land, right? The
Yeah.
people that work at the forest preserve and all the different roles at the forest preserve. So they were so excited. They were very enthusiastic about it. So that made it even more of a wonderful experience for me, just that they were so into it.
That's awesome. And what did that do as far as just like the public, how was it received, and did that turn into commissions, or do people want to buy the paintings?
I did sell paintings. I had an interview with the Daily Southtown, which was so cool. I was on the front page of the Southwest section. And that's a newspaper that I think really does well to support the arts. I know that I've seen a lot of articles about Lockport's art scene in that paper as well. So so let me tell you how I became a knife painter, because that when I did that exhibit, I was doing all brushwork still. Um, and the transition from brushes to knives was sort of slow. It didn't happen all at once, but we went on a trip to Michigan one summer, and I packed all of my plein air gear with. I brought my paints, I have a little backpack that has like everything in it, and then my tripod and my easel and everything. And we got to Michigan, and I'm ready to go start my first painting out at the beach, and I realized I didn't bring any brushes. The one thing I forgot to pack was paintbrushes. So I actually went and bought some at the Meyer, and they were no good. Like they were just craft brushes. So it was like, no brushes are better than these. With the oil paint, it just wasn't working. So I did have my knife, my mixing knife, and it was like, okay, either I'm gonna not paint or I'm gonna paint with the knife. So that's what I did. And I have to credit my husband, because he would say, I like your knife paintings way better than your brush paintings, which is like, you're kind of like, oh no,
That's
uh,
dangerous territory, right? for
yeah,
for somebody to compliment, it's, hey, what are you talking about?
yeah, right. So, I am excited about the paint itself. I like there to be, just oil paint has such a thickness to it. It has such a neat texture. When you get it on with the knife, you can see a lot of different kinds of texture. You can kind of get the paint mixing on the panel. So I really liked the effect, but it made me so nervous, because it was like, I'd be okay, I'll be a knife painter, but then I'd have a subject I wanted to paint, and I'd say, oh my God, I can never, how could I ever paint that with a knife? But instead of just, saying, oh, I can't paint that with a knife and not trying it, I would always try it and see, can I paint this with a knife, and how does that turn out, or how can I manipulate it to make it look how I want it to look, or at least in a way that I'm satisfied with. So that I started doing exclusively knife paintings, I think like 4 years ago. But
Yeah.
now I'm back to the brush a little bit.
Are you?
A little bit. Like this one I
Okay.
did
Yeah.
last week, and it's big, so to cover that whole thing with paint with a knife painting uses a ton of paint, which is part of the fun of it. But to do
Yeah.
something that large, I was like, I don't know. And I did that plein air. So it was like a 2-hour painting session. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start with the brush and then go back and bring the knife in. But I didn't really like, the knife painting is mostly just like the magnolias and a couple of green areas. So that's mostly brush, which is like,
I've seen on Instagram, I think you working on painting, and then you'll just scrape everything off of it.
yeah, it happens.
And I mean, at some point I was thinking, and it was absurd. I thought to myself, well, she's just reusing that paint. No, you can't reuse it. It's all mixed together. So it's oils. And I started thinking, wow, that's expensive.
Yeah.
Um, but it's cool. It's cool that you go to that extent, right?
Well, sometimes paintings just are not working to the point where
Yeah,
you can't save it, or you could kind of save it, but it looks so forced that then
yeah,
like you don't like it. You
yeah,
don't like it, even though it's okay. So It's not extremely often that I scrape a whole painting off, but I do it when it's the right thing to do.
Where would you say, and I'm just going to use the word and you can give your own word if you want, where did the fearlessness come from to say, okay, because you'd say, how am I going to paint that? And
Yeah.
then you said, well, I'm just going to go do it.
I'm not I'm not super sure where it came from. It's, no one's ever asked me that before. People have said that I'm a confident paint, like the confidence shows through in
Yeah.
the work. And I think that confidence is sort of a marker of fearlessness, that, they kind of go together. Sometimes confidence comes from knowing what you're doing, but sometimes it comes from just being willing to try and not be afraid of the failure.
Yeah.
Um, I guess it's kind of like I don't really have anything to lose. I mean, you can certainly put yourself down in the dumps, like, oh, I can't I can't get this right, or I'm not a good painter, or whatever artists go through, the self-doubt,
Yeah.
but um I don't know. And it's kind of been even beyond like the painting itself. Like, do you want to paint a duck? Yes. I don't know how big that duck is, and when I see the duck I go, oh my gosh. With these ducks for the Lockport program this summer, but just saying yes, even though you don't know how it will work out, or it's not something you've ever tried before. I don't know. I guess I really wanted so badly to be a painter that that's how you do it. You try it and you do
Yeah.
it and you figure out what works for you. And that's the other thing too, is taking classes and learning from other artists, um, and really learning to take what makes sense for me as an artist and incorporate those things, or change what I learn a little bit to make it work for me. Um, One example is painting color charts, learning how your colors mix. You hear you really should paint color charts. You really have to do that, and that's what background knowledge, and it makes it so much easier to mix, and you save paint down the road because you are reflexively mixing your paint. And I would be like, oh, like that was just so tedious sounding, and having to keep the brushes clean and tape everything off, and just not my style. But I knew there was value there. And I don't know why I didn't think of it until one day I said, wait a minute, I don't paint anything with a brush. Why would I paint my color charts with a brush? I'll paint them with a knife. And it was like, there you go. Do it. You just figure out what works for you, and adapt it if you need to.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I can't stand it when, no matter what it is, a commercial for something pops up, whether it's an art course or, there's courses everywhere now, right? And you'll hear somebody say, this is the only way to do this, or this is the best way. And I kind of go, I don't, maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't believe it. I
Yeah.
don't believe it, because there are so many ways to do things.
There are. And if everybody did everything the same way, it would be really boring. That's why I tell my art students that we are not a factory. Like, if everybody makes something that comes out the exact same way, that's like a factory. And we
Yeah.
are not a factory. We are here to see the individual differences and celebrate those, and be excited about how everything is unique. Each person's creation is different. So,
Yeah, I think about the blank wall or the blank canvas, and I'm not one to get too caught up in, oh, what am I going to do?
yeah.
Um, and maybe that's because a lot of times it's client work or it's commission work. But when I'm working on my own stuff, I tend to explore and sketch. And then if I fall in love with something, then I'm like, okay, I'll take this off the paper and I'll explore it further. But when I was working on the Downers Grove Library mural on that curved wall,
Yeah.
and I remember I was standing in front of the wall and I was just about to start. And, so you're at that point where there's nothing on the wall except some white paint. And it's time to put, in my case, I put pencil down first. Man, I was really intimidated by it. And
Yeah.
I thought, why do I feel this way? And it was something that it was heavy, and I just kind of went, well, okay, I just have to work through it. And then it was fine, but it was just that first day when I start.
Yeah.
It was very strange. So I don't know if you experienced that in the face of, exploring anyway.
I did with the duck for sure.
Did you?
I
Did,
did because it was not even white. It was like that odd gray color to begin
yeah,
with. And so and I've never painted anything like a landscape on something that's curved
yeah,
and a landscape in the round where you're going to be seeing it from all around and having to problem solve that and wanting it to go well from the beginning. So I put that terracotta color all over the duck. It's like just that you have to just do that first thing
yeah,
and get the train rolling, and then for me at least most of the time it's like, okay, I know I can do this. Like I know I can, this is going to work out fine. Just one step and then the next step, you know, and
yeah. Some momentum and inertia,
yeah,
huh?
yeah, no,
Yeah. It's funny because I come out of a product background, toys and junk, and so many of the things that I'd end up painting were gray at first because you're working over something that's been sanded and then primed.
yeah,
And so when that showed up, I leaned on it and I smelled it, and I could smell the primer on it.
yeah.
Felt like home, like
Oh, yeah,
I was comfortable with it.
fun.
So that's pretty cool to hear your take. Like you were like,
Yeah, no,
oh.
I thought it smelled funny too. I don't know that smell. It's like, hmm, yeah,
It's
that's
like body shop smell a little bit,
yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit. So, are you a technician with your art?
But tell me more about what you
I
mean.
guess I'm asking because I'll let everybody in on a dirty little secret that when we're both working on these ducks, right? And I'll probably, if you're cool, if you send me a photo, I'll pop photos up
Yeah.
of our ducks here.
Yep.
But we're working on these ducks for this summer art series, public art in Lockport, Illinois, and I'm looking at this thing, and something I can't stand is painting for the outdoors because the elements are so nasty. And I'm kind of biding my time on this, and I'm like, what am I going to use? Am I going to go with like an oil-based paint? Am I going to go with an enamel? The duck is made out of fiberglass. Is it flexible? It doesn't feel flexible. I'm thinking about all this stuff. And I don't even remember how it started, Maggie. Somehow I asked Maggie what she was using, and she said, "Oh, I did this research,
Yeah.
and I've got these Nova paints, and now I see Nova paints everywhere. By the way, it's like you
Oh,
get
yeah.
a car and you see that same model everywhere. Now everybody's talking about Nova paints everywhere I look. So that's why I ask if you're a technician, because you really researched it, and I totally rode your coattails.
Well, I'm glad it's amazing paint. Yeah. So I am a researcher and I'm an information junkie, but I would not say that I'm a technician as far as painting goes. I like to use quality materials. I like to do archival supports, but I guess when I think about like being technical, to me, that's like a more tight and structured style
Mm,
or a more traditional approach to the actual physical act of painting. But as far as like the the technical aspects of the materials, I definitely like to know what I'm using, and I like to know the history of things sometimes. But definitely to know the background behind what's a good thing to use and why.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it makes sense, right? Because you're trying to cut off any challenges that might arise if you painted it and it's out in the public and suddenly the paint just washed out. What happened?
Right.
Don't want that.
Yes. No,
Hmm.
definitely
Hmm. So, um, there's a couple of things I want to ask you about, and so let's see. Here, I'm going to do a clap. Tell me about your your transition then to, you went into knife painting, you took courses from your plein air teacher. Who did you say it was again?
Jackie Francis, who I did plein air with.
Jackie Francis.
Jim
And then
Swanson was the guy I started painting landscapes with.
I'm sorry, say his name again.
Jim Swanson.
So Jim Swanson. So you had these two instructor mentor people who were, and are they knife painters or were they brush painters?
Brush.
Yeah, and so were you brush at the time
Yeah, when
when
I
you were
first
with them
started.
until
Yep.
you had the issue on
Fine. Yeah.
vacation, right?
Yep.
So then you have your show with the public park and land that you did these beautiful seasonal paintings for. And then what happened next? Like how did you so I know you sold a few, but then did anything like click or change for you at that point as far as selling your paintings and commissions?
I would say it was a fairly long process to develop a like a regular sales of paintings. But what I think I got out of doing that Hadley Valley series was just that, the idea of doing series of spending time kind of focusing on either a location or like painting a lot of flowers or you know whatever it may be and I have gone through, I'm trying to think of what different things I have gone through. um, I would say that after the Hadley Valley exhibit was when I started to try and exhibit my paintings in juried shows more regularly. It's kind of a turning point as far as taking myself seriously as a painter, I think, because I had gone through and painted all the paintings and put them together. And I had written a grant for the Illinois Arts Council agency to be able to help support the framing of that Hadley Valley exhibit and the publicity and everything. So it just kind of it it really gave me it gave me some confidence as far as not just being a hobbyist, but really being a serious artist and putting my work out in the public. So that was a turning point in that sense.
How did you know to go for the grant? Like what turned you onto that?
Um, I think so. There's a book that I used. I don't refer to back to it as much, but it is a book by Allison Stanfield called I'd Rather Be in the Studio. And it's like a guidebook for artists for marketing purposes and kind of developing your career as a professional artist. And she just had so many really great bits of advice in like blueprints almost for like if you're going to have your own exhibit, these are things you can think about. And one of the things that she had was take a look at the CV or bio pages of other artists in your area who are at a more progressed stage in their career than you are, and look at what galleries they exhibit at, look at what kind of things they have on their resumes. And one of the artists that I looked at had a grant from the Illinois Arts Council agency. So I'm like, oh, well, let me look into that and see what that's all about. And I have received 3 grants from them over the years since 2015. And you can do a like a professional development track or a project track. So I've done both the Hadley Valley exhibit, and then I did an exhibit at LaGrange Art League 2 years ago. Those were the project tracks. So like the exhibit was the project. And then I did a professional development one. I took a class, actually a workshop at Palette and Chisel 1 year. So that was cool.
That's
So it just,
awesome.
yeah, it really gives you the ability to um, it kind of have an enrichment with a professional development, that's like an enrichment of your skills, or the opportunity to mount an exhibit maybe when that would be something that, as far as the cost, I mean, there is a cost of framing and publicity and everything, and sometimes a rental of the space. So the grants are really nice to um, sort of help offset those costs from your own pocket.
Yeah, I had never, I've been so commercial in so much of my career. I had never considered grants. It just wasn't a part of my um, paradigm. I didn't know about it, and that's really cool. And were they substantial in how they helped?
Um, yeah, so I can't remember. There's a maximum that you can apply for, and whatever you apply for, you have to have a match, whether it comes from your own pocket or another funding source. So they basically are covering 50% of the costs that you determine yourself.
So that's cool. So you kind of figure out what's it going to cost, and then you count your cost and go, can I cover the half of this? And
Yeah,
then you get the half of it. So
right.
that's awesome. And then I'm sure you account for your costs somehow and report back to them. And
Yep,
then
yep.
and
There's a
then
yep.
and then is it yours to then sell at the end of it if you're interested? Or
The art that you make for the
yeah, like would you have to, if you sold a painting that say was funded, the frames or whatever, would you have to give it back
no,
financially, or it's just you're
no,
good, you can go
that's
and sell now?
yep.
Okay, that's really cool. Um, and I'm fascinated by the fine art aspect of business because it's it's different in so many ways, because the a lot of the work that I do is um, it's compelled by, we're going to pay you to do this because it's an investment in us churning out a product later. And I don't make it sound very sexy, right? It's like, it's not as cold as all that.
Yeah,
And some of the products are really cool and some are not, and some
yeah.
are just like, okay, got this widget to knock out. But fine art, I've always thought, and I could be totally wrong, right? But my thing with fine art has been, it's still a it's still a business. It's just artists are typically creating something that they are their product. Their vision is their product.
Yeah.
Although it can be impacted by a commission, right? Will you make these purple or what? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's an interesting thing too. And for me, I am not trying to make paintings that sell. You know what I mean? Like my truest reason for making the painting is because it's selfish, as you said earlier for the podcast. Like it's because I get something out of it. I get,
Yeah.
it's exciting to create the colors. It's exciting to put the paint down and to have that texture and to have a finished piece. And there are styles of painting that are desirable, maybe more desirable, or that are more like commercial in the sense of fine art, in that like this is what a painting that goes into this gallery looks like, or that gallery. And I'm not, I don't do that. I paint what I love, and if someone else loves it enough to take it into their own home and collection, then that's really amazing to me. It's
Yeah.
an
Do you work with an agent at all, or is it all just your
no,
website and kind of
yep,
as people see things?
yep, just on my website. And I've been, sold a fair amount at juried exhibits that I've been in the last couple years. There's one in Minnesota, one in Rock Island or Davenport, I guess, but just um, so that's been kind of neat. That's something that in the past I would get into the exhibit, but not necessarily sell my work or get an award. And that sort of picked up pre-COVID, sort of was picking up a little bit. So now it's
Yeah.
like getting on the other side of that hump. Um, I've done a couple art fairs. This year I wasn't totally sure about it. But I did sign up to do the Fox River Arts Ramble, which is June 5th. So we just kind of get back out there a little bit and see how it goes. So
And that looks like it's going to be a go at this point, right?
yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah.
A lot,
Good.
a lot of the art fairs seem like they're going forward, at least right at this point.
Yeah. Is that in Batavia or Geneva, or where's that going to be at?
So that actually goes up and down the Fox River. I think it's from Aurora to St. Charles. I'm not
Okay.
sure if it goes further north and south than that, but
On like whatever the weekend is, it goes all the way up and down.
Yeah, it's just one day this year. So
Yep.
last year it didn't happen, and the year before, I think it was the year before, it was we got 4 inches of snow. It was April like 14th or something, and I was doing a plein air painting demonstration
Yeah.
on the Sunday, and it snowed like 4 inches. So I stood inside the little shop, and I was painting the King County Courthouse in Geneva. So that was on. So that may be why it's now in June this year,
Yeah.
because you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah. June is a better, there's not snow in Chicago in June. If
Yep.
it is, the earth has gone off its axis. So
Yeah.
it's just as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would you say that like do you make like is it a small portion of your income then is off of fine art and it's kind of like something you're just kind of rumbling along on?
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
You-
I every year I have a higher income
Yeah.
from it, and it's not. It's painting sales. I teach through LaGrange Art League. I've been teaching um, special programs like given a history of plein air painting and a demonstration this Thursday coming up April 22nd. So just little here
Yeah.
and there things. Um, but I think last year I made almost as much from my painting as I did from my part-time teaching job. So I got that going for me.
That's awesome.
And but like just in small increments of increase every year.
Yeah.
It's not like have always been profitable, and I myself, well, I could support myself with my teaching and my painting. I probably couldn't support my family of four,
Yeah. Well,
but
overnight successes are usually a long time in the making,
yeah.
right?
Well, interesting. Yeah.
You got to keep showing up and showing up and showing
Well,
up.
yeah, that's true. And lucky for me, it's fun to show up for painting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really, I have not been able to separate my art from my it's not my identity because that's you get into weird stuff if that's like your identity, but it's I can't really separate it. It's almost like it's not my identity, but it's kind of like an appendage, like another
Yeah.
arm or something. Like if I lost my left arm, it'd be bad.
Yeah.
And it's such a wonderful muscle to exercise, that part of you that's creative and then to be able to you know create cool things but then be invited to create cool things or that's a real cool corner to turn.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And how well, I guess I don't have a question after making quite that pronouncement. But I remember when I met you the first time, we were in Lockport. We were up on the third floor of the historic Gaylord building in Lockport, and all the artists were there, or a majority of the artists were there. And there was artwork all around the inside of this gallery space. And there was a lot of interesting work there. And then I saw one of your knife paintings, and it was that winter scene of it was a pathway or a road.
The canal.
Yeah. Oh, that was the canal.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was like, man, whoever that is, they can paint. Like that was I was just in love with it. And uh I can't remember if we actually I think we met there because I kind of sought you out and I'm pretty forward and I probably scared you because I was like, hey, it's really yeah, you don't get scared. But I was like, hey, this is awesome. And I don't remember though beyond that. And so I kind of watched the work that you were doing throughout because you had all these doors that you were
Yeah.
painting, all these different doors. And anyway, that's kind of my clunky segue into this public art event that occurred in Lockport, and it was called Unlock Merging Art and Industry, and it was. And correct me if I'm missing anything, but it was um, a summer art event in the city for the city that had a term. So it kind of went from May to, I want to say, August or September, early September. And they had a call for artists, and there was nothing specific as far as the medium that the artist would use, except they wanted it to refer to the history and the industry of Lockport, and have an interactive element to it for the public, with the public. And I'm curious, like, how did that come to your attention,
Hmm.
and how did you, like, what was your pitch?
Yeah. So I think probably I saw it posted by John Lustig. I believe that he shared the call on Facebook just as a general push. And so I said, why not? Let's give this a try and see. And it really kind of fit with where I was at that time, because I was working as a museum educator in a local history museum in West Chicago, and I had a good amount of knowledge of the time period shortly after Lockport was founded, just because of West Chicago was founded in 1849, and it came, with the railroad coming through. And so I was already like interested. I said I'm an information junkie. Like, I was really interested in just in general, the development of the Chicago region is really interesting, I think, and from a historical perspective, connected to transportation in particular. And so, Lockport being a canal town, and that was the first major transportation of goods in the area. I really felt like, okay, that's cool. What can I learn about Lockport? How can I take that history and the art and put them together? As far as the programming goes, I think that I had a few different ideas that I submitted. Like, I kind of feel like it wasn't really clear about, like, it was open ended, like you said, right? So I was like, well, I don't really know what they're looking for, but I've got this idea and that idea and that idea, and submitted it. And then they were kind of like, well, pick whichever one you want. It's like, I don't know which one, but I ended up choosing one of the things that I love about Lockport, and that has been even more enhanced. I can't believe how much has progressed in a positive way, even since 2018,
Yeah.
because my project focused on the architecture on State Street, and that those old buildings with all of the Victorian fancy, cornices and everything else. Um, that I feel like a lot of times people just go through their daily life and don't look around. And so I wanted to call attention to the fact that, like, look at these amazing buildings here. Or if you've never heard of Lockport, you really should go, because they have these amazing buildings. They have this rich history. And so my idea was to have a scavenger hunt where you would have to figure out I painted doors and windows, or like portions of these buildings, and you'd have to figure out which building is it. And I made like a little pamphlet that had the picture of the painting, and then there was little rhyming couplet clues that were historically connected, like the building, Mama Onesta's building was a livery, and so there was like some kind of a little poem about it, talked about how it used to be a livery, but now you can have lasagna. I don't, that's not much more poetic than that, but I just really had a lot of fun with like weaving it all together. And then the prize was, once you did the whole scavenger hunt, you found out which address each of the buildings was, you put it in for a raffle to win one of the paintings. So it was fun. It was really fun to come up with the concept and put it all together.
Yeah, it was a really good one. And I loved all your paintings.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was really neat. uh I like that you looked at the whole project before, ahead of time, and you said, well, I'm going to put three different presentations together for them, three different options. And that's, I mean, how much time did that take you to do?
I don't know. My brain is like always turning stuff around.
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, I think part of it was I wasn't really sure what kind of public programming they were looking for either. Like one of the ideas I had was this inspired by something that I had found and tried at the museum in West Chicago, which is called drawing on history. So it was like you're actually drawing, but it has a historical context. Um, and that was maybe, I don't know if that was like drawing some of the buildings. I can't remember, but so that was not as complex of an idea. And to be honest, I don't think that the one I did started out that complex either. I think my main idea was like, it's a scavenger hunt and I'll paint these things and then you have to find out which building. But as I get into it, then it's like, ooh, it would be fun to do like clues. Ooh, it would be fun if the clues rhyme. Like, you know, so
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have that all planned out from the start. That sort of evolved as I was in the creative process.
Well, that's all part of it, right? It's almost like a painting where you're layering and layering and layering, and then, you know, if you're writing and creating, there's layers to that too. Are you a writer as well then?
Not no, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I think you are, because
Okay.
you did it for this public event and
I
it
did
was
do it, and
part of
I
the
actually
deal.
I guess I am because I mean, I'm not like a regular writer, I guess I would say, but when I
Yeah.
did my solo exhibit at LaGrange Art League, I had all of these photos that I wanted to paint, but they wouldn't fit into like 8 by 10 or 9 by 12. I needed to do them panoramic. And so I painted, I don't know how many, a number of panoramic 12 by 24-inch paintings. And I was writing up my wall labels for these. And I found myself like going on and on and on and on. And I was like, oh my God, I can't just rambling on. So I wrote haikus for all of them.
That's a way to put a limit on it.
Yeah. So that was fun. That was fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3, 5, and 3, right?
5, 7, and 5.
5, 7, and 5. I was off by a couple of primes. 5,
Yeah.
7, and 5. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So now I guess not a serious writer, but for fun, more for fun.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit more than just for fun, maybe, right? Because it's cool and it's attached. But anyway, I won't quibble over that. Um, so so what was the response to your task that you gave people in Lockport at the
I had
doors?
pretty good response. I had
Yeah.
people, yeah, and they I can't we did like a live stream of the pulling of the winner at the ISM. John and Nancy um did put me on Facebook Live, and I think Nancy was the photographer or the camera person and John was holding the bowl and I'm like stirring around, and it was kind of fun, you know, just to not I it's like you got to have some extra fun motivation to do it, you know.
Yeah.
Not that people would not do it, but why not make it a little extra fun and give away a painting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I that's so cool. And then somebody has a part of it and they've got the story. And I mean, that's what I really enjoyed about the event, apart from the other artists, was I had the interactive mural, so people would sign up and they would come out and actually paint.
Yeah.
And everybody was terrified they were going to ruin it.
Yeah.
And no, you're not going to ruin it. And then, you know, I would have people who had never really painted before, and I would just show them how to hold the brush. Kids, you don't have to show as much. Like you said, you know, they're just, it's kind of unabashed. And, you know, as they approach the teen years and a little older, they're a little bit more self-aware, and that can be a drawback for people. But, you know, to be with an adult and you know, allow, and they're invited in to paint. And I at points would just, if it was going well and they were happy, I'd say, I'm going to step back. I want to get a better perspective on the painting. And I'd step back, you know, 15, 20 feet and just leave them.
Yeah.
And that was fun. That was fun to do.
Yeah.
Art is really fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. What a cool experience for those people too.
Yeah, I think so. For the majority, I think they had a good time. There's one little boy who would come in frequently after school, and he had painted on the mural at one point. And one day I was just sitting there kind of looking at it, because that's what I'll do. I'll pull a chair up and I'll sit and look for a little while. And he pulled his chair up next to mine and he said, "We did a really good job on this." And I said, "Yeah, we did."
Yeah.
Um,
Fun.
but yeah, I guess art is fun, except when it's not, right? Like when
Yeah.
you're scraping all this, it's not, I had a day like that the other day where I was just sketching.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't draw. It's just not, today's not the day. So
It's
I'm not,
weird. Yeah, it's weird when that happens. It's interesting
yeah,
too, because and that's something that we talked about in the adult class that I teach is like how do you get past that when that happens, or how do you, and I've had days where, I mean, you don't always push past it, but some days
right.
where it's like you actually have to like force yourself to start, and the more that you do it, the more you realize that once you start, it's gonna be good. Or it's gonna, you're gonna be glad that you did, I guess, most
Hmm.
of the time. But just knowing that, like, well, I kind of feel like painting, but I don't really have anything that seems interesting to paint, or whatever. Just saying, picking something, no matter what it is, and just trying, like, keeping up the consistency of being creative, because it's so easy to like it's got to be like exercise, right?
Yeah.
I do exercise, but I'm not like I have to have a routine. So
Yep.
creativity is the same way though, because if you let those days pass and pass, it becomes harder, I think, to go back and get back on the horse. Is that the right?
Chuck Close is one of my favorite artists, and I love his phrase, or his philosophy. A quote, I guess, is proper, of his is, um, "Some people wait around for inspiration. The rest of us get to work."
Yeah, you got
And it's like, here's a dude who's quadriplegic, and he's like, "I just got to get to work. I there's lots of days I don't feel like working, but you just do it." What do you do on the days where, how do you recognize that it's one of those days where you just got to go, I can't push through it today?
um I well, like today today I was gonna go out. I'm gonna go out. My plan is to go out once a week and paint one that big at the Arboretum. And I had
Hmm.
all like, okay, I know where I'm going. The weather was looking great. I made my timed in
Mm,
reservation, and then and then I look at the radar this morning, and it's like rain until
yeah.
1 o'clock. So then it was like I could paint, like I have the time to paint, but I don't really know what like I just, I just wasn't feeling it. And so what I did instead was I photographed paintings. Like I still did something related and supportive of the bigger picture, but I today was a day that I definitely had the time. I definitely have the paint. I just I wasn't a day to force myself.
So what's next for you? What you
Well,
working on?
I was supposed to have an exhibit at the Woodstock Opera House last October. We
Yeah.
Everyone knows it's because of COVID, it didn't happen.
Right.
But they bumped me till this October. So I'm looking at writing another grant, see if I can, get the timing is going to be a little closer, because the grant cycle opens in July and my exhibit is in October. So I have my little sticky note up there to remember to check in on that. But it's going to be interesting because this is an exhibit where I haven't painted. Well, I haven't painted paintings specifically for the exhibit. I have, tons of paintings, and so going through those paintings and like curating the exhibit for myself, I think is going to be an interesting experience. I'm thinking that these larger paintings, that I was kind of thinking that those could be a part of this exhibit as well. So just kind of seeing if they are, then they would be kind of the focal point. And most of my other paintings are smaller, like 8 by 10, 9 by 12. And how do I fit all that together? And so I think this will be the first time that I'm really hanging a solo exhibit where I'm truly curating in the sense of pulling from like all of my work.
So, Maggie, as we're getting ready to wrap up this episode, what would be your kind of parting words of wisdom for any artist out there who's like, oh, I want to do what Maggie's doing, and I'm not quite sure of what to do?
I would say to look around for what opportunities there are. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, to ask, for example, with my forest preserve paintings, I had all of those paintings. It was just a simple question. I was terrified to ask it because, you figure, oh, they're just going to tell me no. Maybe they will. And it's not the end of the world. But sometimes they say yes, and so you just have to put yourself out there, be willing to try things, and when you're given opportunities, say yes, and then figure out how to make it happen.
Oh, that's so good. What is it that's so frightening about no, about being told no?
I don't know. Well, with artists, we're being vulnerable and
Yeah,
putting ourselves out there in a creative way, and that, so it's, as you said, it's like your appendage,
right.
and so then it has a different impact when someone says no.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like asking somebody out, right? And then they
Yeah,
say no.
kind
It's
of is.
like, how?
It's kind of funny that it makes me think of the first time that I went and did plein air painting on my own, not in class, was
Yeah.
at the beach in Michigan, and I felt like a sixth grader going to my first dance. Like seriously, I was like, "Oh my God, are people gonna look at me funny? Is somebody gonna, like, here I am with this clunky easel and all these paints, and there's nobody else at the beach painting, and yeah, just that awkward. There's definitely a lot of awkward feelings an artist.
Yeah. Well, especially when you're growing, right?
Yeah.
Especially early on, because you're kind of trying on the whole art thing. It's like, I'm an artist,
Yeah.
and who are you to say you're an
I
artist? And
know.
it's like, well, look at my drawings. Are they good?
Yeah. That was another interesting question I would get. People would say, well, are you a professional artist? And I was
Oh,
like, I don't, so I was talking to my mom about that one day, and she's like, well, why don't you ask them what they think that means? What
yeah.
does it mean to you to be a professional artist? And then I can answer if I
Right.
am or not. But I think then I think about it like, professionals of any ilk are, practicing what
Right.
their domain is, and they are doing professional development regularly. And
Yeah.
I think what people really want to know is this: do you make money from your art? I think that's really
Right.
what they're trying to ask a lot of the time, but I think there's more to it than just that. So it was an interesting question that
Yeah.
I don't feel like I get it so much anymore, but early on I was getting it a lot. I was like, I don't know how to answer that.
Maybe if somebody asks again, you just tell them, no, but I'm rich. And you really, and they'll be like, what is, I don't know what I just got the answer for. So if people want to learn more about you or reach you, like where can they find you?
I have a website, maggiecapettini.com, which Capettini is one P, two T's. I grew up listening to my dad say one P, two T's.
That's awesome. I'll put it
Uh,
in the show notes too, so it'll
yeah,
be linked.
and Instagram, I'm at Maggie Paints, which is easy.
Okay, very cool. Maggie, thank you for being my guest. You rock.
Oh, thanks for having me, John. It's so much fun. It's so much fun chatting with you.
Thank you, Maggie, so much for being my guest. It was really cool to get to know you better and to get some more insight under the hood of how things work in your world. I love that you were off on vacation and you didn't bring your brushes, and so you decided that you were just going to knife paint, and how that the lack of resources really pushed you into a direction that maybe you wouldn't have taken otherwise, and have really created your particular look and style. I love that part of the story, that you didn't just fold stuff up and say, well, I guess that's it. And I love too that when you were making submittals to this fine art event a couple of years ago that we were actually going to meet at, that you didn't just submit one, you submitted three. I love that. I love that you were hedging your bets and that you had great ideas, and three are better than one. So thanks once again. We can learn a whole lot from you in regard to ingenuity and go getitiveness. Is that even a word? I'm going to make it a word right now. Um, but if you want to find out more about Maggie, you can look in the show notes, and you can find her there. And we actually have those ducks are going to be going on display in the public today. So I'm going to see her just shortly after I record this, which is pretty cool. And for those of you who are creatives looking to make a living from your art, I hope that you get busy about the business of making something cool, taking that next step forward, whether it is creatively, whether it is some kind of business practice you're working on or some system that you're setting up, and that you will start to make a living from what it is that you do, or keep on making that living, and maybe you're forging into some new territory. I'll see you next week. Have a great one. Cheers.